So some things that I had in mind when I was writing cross country. Keeping in mind that my audience I'm writing young adult fiction, so my audience primarily is middle school and high school age, even though adults read young adult fiction too. That age group was really kind of the reader that I had in mind. And I wanted to be very careful about what I was presenting to them. Betts gets this invitation from an older friend, Emmy, to drive cross country in this old Volkswagen bus and go to Woodstock. And she's excited about that, but she right away realizes, well, my parents are not going to let me go. And so she struggles with, well, what do I do? I want to go, but I'm pretty sure that if I ask mom and dad, they're going to say no. Well, she decides that she's going to go without even asking. That she sneaks out of her house one night and sneaks away and meets her friend and is going to go. I did not want a teenage reader to think, that's a good idea. So that was very much in my mind, that I wanted to present this story and this exciting thing that Betts gets to do, but I didn't want it to be appealing. That I wanted the reader to be conscious of the fact that this is a serious thing she's doing. So I did that in a couple ways. One thing I did is there's a lot of buildup to her actually going, and it felt a little bit when I was writing it like, oh gosh, I really kind of want to move this story along. And there's a number of chapters where she's indecisive and she's kind of weighing the implications, and while that might slow the beginning down a little bit, I felt like that was important to show that this is a serious thing she's doing. So I had that in mind. And the other piece that I had to consider was there's a third person on this trip. When Emmy invites Betts, she says, I'm going with a friend. And she doesn't really give her any information about this friend. Well, the first passage I'm going to read for you, we meet that friend. And discover pretty quickly that he's not a very pleasant person to be with. And as the trip, as they move along on this trip, he gets worse and worse. He's a horrible person. He's racist and he's abusive and he is not someone that you would want to go on a trip with or even get in a car with. And he's a stranger to Betts. So that, again, presented me with this problem of, well, I need my character to do this, to move my story along, but I don't in any way want a reader to think that this is something they should do. It's a little bit like, I think of it like a horror movie. Where we're sitting there, we're watching this movie, and the characters they're going to go into that house, or the power's out, and they're going to go down the creaky stairs into the basement, and we're sitting there watching it, thinking, "Don't do that." The guy's down there, the guy with the X and the blowing mask is in, and we know as the audience, that's a bad decision, but the character does it anyway, and that's what moves the story along. So that's where I found myself, that I need my character to do this, but I need my reader to know right from the start that it's not a good choice. So in presenting this villain, I guess, I wanted to right from the start make that clear, and a lot of my other characters kind of get developed pretty slowly. As Betts meets them, she learns a little bit more about them and gets to know them. And this guy, Seth is his name, I wanted from the start for the reader to see what he's like and know what he's like, so they know right from the start, this is not a good choice that she's making. So, here's Seth. I got a juggle. This happens, Bets has just snuck out of her house and ridden her bike through town in the middle of the night, and they have, Emmy and Bets have talked on the phone, and they have a predetermined meeting place. So that's where we pick up the story. My face was mostly buried in Emmy's hair, but I could see the light change, and I lifted my head. The shadow moved toward us with the lantern held low to the ground. Its bouncing light flashed up, blinding me, and then swung down again, leaving me squinting into darkness. I couldn't make out any details. The shadow seemed to shift from side to side as it walked. "Hey, girly girl," said a gritty voice, and the shadow lifted the lantern so I could see his face. I squinted again at the sudden light and tried to focus on the shape in front of me. Dark waves of oily hair tumbled to his shoulders and framed a face with angular features. A sharp nose stuck out above a thin mustache, and a half-grown beard dirtied his cheeks and gathered into a wedge of hair on a pointy chin. His eyes were as dark as his hair, but the lantern light glinted off them. It made me feel like he was looking right through me. The man looked me up and down in a way that made me want to pull my arms in across my chest and look down toward scuffling feet. He looked at me with the same contempt I'd often seen on the disapproving faces of adults in town, but along with it came the uncomfortable feeling I'd get when the boys at school stared too long. "Hey, Bets, this is Seth." Emmy's cheerful voice didn't match the person she gestured toward. Emmy's letter to me said she was heading to Woodstock with a friend. I'd either forgotten that or had decided it wasn't important, or I guess maybe I'd assumed Emmy's friend was another girl, a girl like Emmy and like me. "Nice to meet you, girly girl." Seth stuck his hand out toward me in a sudden movement that seemed to throw him off balance for a second. He shifted his feet to stay upright, and the movement rippled through him, reminding me of a snake. I tried to convince myself that Seth was like the darkened houses I'd passed on my ride out to the river and Emmy's campsite, intimidating in a way that caught you off guard, but as harmless as any of the houses I rode by every day. But I couldn't brush off the eerie feeling. I gathered my courage as best I could and planted my feet, the same way I'd done in the middle of the street in front of the dark house. "My name is Elizabeth," I said, in as firm a voice as I could muster. Seth's immediate response was a cackle that filled the dark around us. The hand he'd extended to shake mine went to his chest as he clutched himself in uncontrolled laughter. He sauntered off, his feet following a curved and staggering path as the lantern swung beside him. Emmy looked at me embarrassed. "Seth's okay when you get to know him." Really, she could see the doubt on my face and added, "He's okay when he's not, well, he's okay most of the time." Emmy's standard cool was conspicuously absent from her assessment of Seth, and I couldn't help feeling like she was trying to convince herself along with me. "He's one of my roommates," she continued. "Well, sort of a new one, actually. He came to the house about 6 months ago. He's dating one of my friends." Then she paused, like she was figuring out how to say what came next. Or was dating, I guess. She dumped him, and then decided not to go to Woodstock with us, which is where the extra ticket came from. None of what Emmy was saying took away the sinking feeling I'd gotten about meeting Seth. "He calls me girly girl. I am anything but girly," I said with a huff. What he called me was the least of all the things that bothered me about Seth, but the nickname he'd immediately adopted for me was the easiest to articulate. It didn't matter. Emmy saw the concern on my face. "Look, Bets, he's annoying and weird, but he's not dangerous. He's just creepy." Yeah. Yes, he was creepy, but not just creepy. I wanted to agree with Emmy and to go along with everything she'd said. Emmy was friendly and optimistic, upbeat and cheerful, and I wanted to be like her and think like her, but I'd known Seth for less than 5 minutes, and I already didn't want him around. I didn't want Emmy to be around him either, but I needed to trust Emmy. I just snuck out of my parents' house and was getting ready to cross the entire country. I desperately needed to trust someone. Emmy was it. All right. So that's Seth. Miss E didn't really have an antagonist. The conflict in Miss E was really internal, with Beth's kind of figuring out how she felt about the war and struggling with that. So it was fun writing a villain into cross country and creating that character.